me also take the opportunity to welcome on stage the Economic Affairs Secretary Ajay. Mr. Seth, could we have you join us on stage, please, as we take a question here from Rahul. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen, for the Economic Affairs Secretary. Go ahead, Rahul.
So I'm saying that what is the tax the economy of our size, economy of our kind should generate versus what's the tax that we actually collect? Is that reasonably converging, or is there a big gap or a small gap? How much is that gap, and what's the trend over the years on that gap?
Okay. If we can give an overall number, what we are collecting as an economy, I'm talking about center and the states put together, is roughly about 17 to 18% of GDP. Is our tax effort. Certainly, it is on a rural size. If you look at just about the BRICS countries, only China has of this order. All other three countries have a much higher. And of course, advanced economies have 25% plus. And China is a different, much more controlled economy, or rather is a controlled economy. So we have to move to the path wherein first from 17, 18% we reach to 20% before we think of where we move further. And in the last couple of years, if we discount what happened during the pandemic, inching up like last year, getting 11% plus centers alone, tax to GDP ratio is a positive sign. And more automation, GST and direct tax simplification is moving to that direction. So yes, approach is more ratio, more people into the tax net, a moderate tax rate, that's the general approach.
So given the, please go ahead.
I just wanted to add to what Secretary Economic Affairs said. If you account for the per capita income of India and compare to the kind of tax to GDP ratio that today's advanced economies had at a similar stage of development, then our tax to GDP ratio between center and the states put together of around 18% that he mentioned is quite comparable at a similar stage of development.
Is quite comparable at a similar stage of development. I think, sir, there was somebody else who had a question here. Yes, sir, we'll get the microphone back to you in just a second. Go ahead. It's there, right there. Yeah.
So my question is to DIPAM Secretary first. You did mention about the national monetization pipeline, some things have been done in InvITs and other things. But if you read the notes, you would be falling way short of the target in this year. Now, there are some very easy baits in national monetization pipeline which can be done very easily. So is there any specific target now? You're adding back the target, what you're going to miss here, and do an extra this thing in next year? And my another question to Chief Economic Advisor is, we have been talking about that, oh, if the recession is there, it is good for India. My question is a vicious circle. Fed and Bank of England have increased the interest rates today. What happens is the capital flows into the fixed treasury bonds. That's the safest bet to do. Our exports, once the recession is there, goes down. The current account deficit increases. My dollar goes up. Rupee goes up against the dollar.
Yeah.
And it's a vicious circle. So the money flow into India will get hampered. So your growth targets of 6 to 6.8, which your economic survey mentioned, does it get impacted? Have you factored in these geopolitical and the recession in the West?
Let me get the DIPAM Secretary to start, and then I'll get the Chief Economic Advisor as well as the Economic Affairs Secretary to comment. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, and then national monetization plan, yes, I think you're right. You know, there's some sectors which are doing relatively better than some of the other sectors. Because, you know, if you see that if you're able to structure the things well, like for example in the road sector, it is fairly well structured, so therefore you can roll out faster. But in some of the sectors, like for example railways, this kind of models have not really worked yet. I think there were one or two trials, but did not succeed. On the specific case of Ashoka Hotel, I can say the Ministry of Tourism is already working on it, and I think hopefully they should be able to work out a model and bid for it. So I think that's a part of their business plan.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Ashoka is actually moving forward. We don't know when it will finally happen, but perhaps the G20 year may not necessarily be the best time for the government to let go of it. But yes, Economic Advisor on the other question that the gentleman raised.
So if the advanced economies actually slow down, you are right, first of all, about your comments about the impact on export growth, etc. That is why I mentioned in the survey as well, on balance, which means we take into account both the costs and benefits of slowdown versus continued growth in the developed economies. And on balance, I have concluded that in the current context of where India stands on inflation situation in the world, etc., a slowdown would be more beneficial than a continued expansion in the developed world, because it would have a meaningful impact on oil prices, commodity prices. It would bring them down. Slowdown on balance would be beneficial. But we have taken a range of 6 to 6.8 with a baseline of 6.5. And the fact that the baseline number is not centered between 6 and 6.8 does convey a story to you, which is that in the current global context, we do see that downside risks are more than the upside possibilities to the baseline number.
Put a very specific question to you, because this has been long pending, India's inclusion in the global bond indices. Is there any further movement on that? Because we were given to understand that it was only a matter of time, and in the early part of 2023 we would finally move towards that, and the issues related to tax, etc., had been addressed and sorted out. Is there any clarity on that?
See, at this point of time, coming to the requirement of for the government borrowings, including that of the state government at the current level of projections, our domestic savings can well take care of that.
Okay. Let me then address the issue that has been raised by many overnight on the rural budget side, and there has been a decrease, there has been a decline there, and one could understand that on account of the lower allocation as far as NREGS is concerned. But if you could explain the thinking and the rationale behind what we've seen happen specifically as far as the rural budget is concerned, and why the decline?
It will not be a correct statement to say the rural budget has come down. Of one particular scheme is the NREGS, that allocation has come down, but that scheme is demand driven. People come for a wage employment because they don't have any other employment opportunity. And as we are seeing it, the economy is picking up, especially the services sector. There is a pull factor from urban areas, people migrating back to the urban areas, and they are getting the job opportunities there. But an equally important, what the fiscal is trying to do, for rural housing, budget has gone up from 20,000 crore to close to 55,000 crore, 54,400 and plus crores. So increase of 170%. Who are the people who are going to construct? Machines are not going to construct. Those houses will be constructed by human beings. So there will be a job demand will be coming in. Similar manner for drinking water, rural drinking water, budget has gone up from 60,000 to 70,000. Of course, part of it will be material, but a significant part will as well be material, because that all has to be embedded below the earth. So these two significant increases which generates job or wage employment in the rural area more than compensate for what has been the reduction in terms of NREGS, but that is based on assessment that demand for wage employment will be less in the coming year. And if it were to be contrary, then obviously through revised estimates, suitable provisions will be made.
The budget has very clearly said that it may not be reliable due to the unprecedented global turbulence and headwinds to put the 24-25 and 25-26 targets as part of the FRBM, and that is what you have stated. So just wanted to understand, because you seem very confident, and yesterday the Finance Secretary also said that we shouldn't have a problem of being able to consolidate 0.7% annually over the next 2 years to get to that number of 4.5%. Why then haven't we placed the glide path in the budget?
It's a question that when we are trying to project beyond a year and over a period of 3-year time, then we have to be sure that assumptions which are making have a reasonable chance of holding on. What we have to look for in terms of the correction, about 2 percentage point over a period of 3 years, whether these are divided in 3 equal sizes or they are different. Now we have taken one slice, 0.5%, and that 0.5% is decided based on our assessment that next 1 year public investment has to play a very strong role along with the private sector investment coming in to keep the growth momentum on. That's why a 0.5, not a 0.7. Now next 2 years, whether the second year can take a more than half of that 0.7 or more or less, depend upon how we see the situation evolving and the global headwinds subsiding by that time. That's why a firm commitment, once an act is amended, laid down, becomes a difficult one, but we are very clear that come 2025-26, we have to reach below 4.5%.
Let me ask the three of you about the growth magnets, and I'll start by asking you, since that was something that the economic survey mentioned very specifically. You know, of the areas of the priorities that the government is working on, has identified, what do you feel the most confident of in being able to really turn the needle as far as accelerating growth is concerned?
I think the first growth magnet for us will be improved balance sheets, improved the private sector capex cycle will commence, and increasingly third will be the public digital infrastructure contribution to growth, because it is going to address two problems that India has been facing historically. One is informality and financial exclusion. Both are being addressed. So all these three things are going to be important growth contributors.
Mr. Sheth?
Some of the signs which are seeking, not in just in terms of the consumption, but we also see in terms of the taxation data which is coming in, even especially in terms of the GST data, and also the gross fixed capital formation, which have been the highest in the first half of the year since 2014-15. These are the signs that economic activity is reviving very strong, and I see that momentum going forward. And when we are talking about growth accelerating, when the adverse external environment is adverse to us, the first goal is to stay closer to 7%, which we are trying to achieve this year, and before, when the global headwinds subside, then think of beyond going 7+.
Okay, yes, and that is the aspiration that hopefully we will be able to do 7% plus. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Many thanks. I know that you have another engagement to get to, so I don't want to hold you back, but thank you very much to the DIPAM Secretary, to the Chief Economic Advisor, as well as to the Economic Affairs Secretary for joining us here on the CNBC-TV18 Budget Verdict. We appreciate your time, and thank you very much for joining us here with your insights.